It's another week on the Pack the Rock podcast. This week it's Indiana hosting Michigan State. I'm Dylan Traeger, joined by Liv Clements, and we welcome Zion Brown for this week. Zion, it's great to have you on.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. I was on the early week version a few weeks ago, and I get to be on this version of it. I love it.
Let's have you as a regular now. So let's go into the Indiana game. It's Indiana hosting Michigan State Saturday at noon. It's Indiana students getting free tickets. I got the over-under at 500 fans at the game in the student section. The old brass spittoon game, it was IU taking it last year in double OT. If you guys remember that game, Dexter Williams only had 2 completions for 30 yards. I hope we don't see a similar game like that this week. What do you guys expect?
I mean, honestly, from this game, I feel like since it's IU's last home game of the season, I expect them to go out with a bang. I think especially the last loss they had against Illinois was hard. Definitely hard to lose in overtime no matter what team it is. But I really feel like this would be a good game for IU. I mean, Michigan State hasn't really done much this season either. They had a lot of QB struggles already. They don't even really have a solid QB right now with Hauser. So, I mean, honestly, I think for IU, this being the last home game, I think it'll be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be an inspired performance. I could see that. It's interesting because, they hyped up after they lost against Penn State. They started to talk about that playoff mode mentality they were in. They won that, last second win against Wisconsin, and they continued to say, okay, playoff mode. And then they got their heart ripped out against Illinois. So now it'll really be fascinating to see how they respond, knowing that, I mean, unless something crazy happens, it has to be like not enough teams are eligible or something like that. They won't make a bowl game. And now there's just 2 more games, kind of just to see what you got. But this team knows that once the clock hits 0 against Purdue in a week and a half, that the season is over.
I think also what's interesting is, like you said, Zion, you don't have anything to look forward to after the season. But what makes me nervous is I feel like you still have 2 games left, and still having these 2 wins under your belt will do a lot for this team. I think you don't want to finish with only 3 wins of the season. Like, no team wants to do that. So I feel like let these 2 wins still be something you look forward to. And at the end of the day, do it for the players that this is their last go. I mean, Aaron Casey has had a tremendous season. And for him, I feel like I'd want to finish strong too. And I think even for Sorsby, he really stepped up to the plate. Even for the guys on the sideline, I mean, for Taven to look at this team, knowing that he couldn't be out there towards the end of the season, but still you want to get these wins for the team no matter what. So I really hope that for Michigan State and Purdue, even though they're both kind of at the bottom of the Big Ten with IU, I hope that they still take those games as serious as they were for Illinois and Penn State.
I think it's a really intriguing matchup. You look at the quarterbacks for Indiana, it's Brennan Sorsby, who's really found a click with the team. You look at his last few games, he played really well against Illinois and Wisconsin and Penn State. And then you look at Michigan State, freshman quarterback Caden Hauser. He hasn't thrown over 200 yards in a game, and he wasn't their starter to start the year as well. It was Noah Kim, who got benched after that Iowa game. I think Indiana defense can have a field day against Caden Hauser, and I really do expect Indiana to take this game by a lot.
I mean, I also see with Michigan State as, like you said, it's not been an impressive showing of them at all. Like you said with Caden Hauser, I mean, he has 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Like, that's not stats where I'm looking at you and I'm thinking you're about to be a threat towards IU at all. And then with their loss against OSU, I mean, it was a blowout, 38-3. I mean, again, IU was closer to Ohio State than that. I'm not saying that doesn't mean that IU is way better than Michigan State, but so far their season towards the end has looked stronger. I think for Michigan State, they looked stronger in the beginning, and now they've started to fall off a little bit. I mean, like you saw with their win against Nebraska, I think that wasn't even that impressive either. I mean, they barely got even 100 yards rushing yards. I mean, they literally had 63 yards the whole game in rushing yards. That's ridiculous. And then they go 3-14 on third down efficiency. I think when you put all of that together, it's just not a team that's an overall threat for IU.
Yeah, offensively, Michigan State is just not that potent. I mean, we just talked about how inconsistent Hauser has been, and Noah Kim wasn't great when he was the starter either. They want to lead on the running back, Nate Carter. He gets about 16, 17 carries a game, has 4 touchdowns on the year. That's who they want to lean on. So I think Indiana's defense shouldn't have that much issue. I say that after they just gave up 48 points to a backup quarterback last week, who Sidebar, John Paddock got benched after that game for Illinois. Like, he's going back to the second string, which I don't get, but I digress. This Michigan State offense is not the Illinois offense, but coming into last week, we didn't think the Illinois offense was as good as it played against Indiana. So I really want to see if this defense can handle this, poor offense from start to finish like they did at home 2 weeks ago against Wisconsin.
So now let's say Indiana's defense stays consistent throughout the game. What do we think the offense needs to do to really pull this game off?
I really honestly think offensively, I'm not disappointed by the offense. I feel like as long as Sorsby keeps a flow with the wide receiver that he has right now, which honestly I think the star wide receiver is going to be Donovan McCulley to go to these next 2 games. I feel like as long as they consist in a flow together, it should be fine. They haven't really been feeding the ball to Jalen Lucas a lot like they usually were, which I think is fine if that's working for the game. I can see Jalen Lucas getting a little more touches with that as well. But I really like seeing Sorsby take control and run the ball on his own. So I feel like that could be something that's a deciding factor in this game if Sorsby really steps up to the plate and decides to run the ball a little bit more. But, of course, that means that, he has to be protected in that sense, which is something they struggle with. So I think if Sorsby steps up to the plate and runs a little bit more, but Donovan McCulley, as long as he's open, I feel like IU will do really good on offense.
Yeah, I think this is a game that'll probably, at least when IU has the ball, is going to be decided up front. The skill in this Michigan State defense is the front 7. They have 25 sacks on the year, so they get in the backfield and they make some trouble that way. So for Indiana's offensive line, that it's still not great, but definitely much improved from what it was last year. Bob Bostad's done a good job taking over as the O-line coach. For the Indiana offensive line, it's going to be about just protecting Brendan Sorsby, giving him time to throw, and just opening those holes for the running backs when they come through too. So I really want to see the battle in the trenches when Indiana has the ball on Saturday.
And kind of adding to what you said, Liv, about Donovan McCulley, I think you got to feed the hot hand with him. Look at these last 3 games, 300 yards and 4 touchdowns from him, and that really came out of nowhere. Really good look to see that Sorsby and him have that kind of connection, and I look forward to seeing that again next year, hoping both guys develop more and continue a full season together. But I think I got Don McCulley getting 2 touchdowns this week.
I agree, for sure.
I think he can do it.
Yeah.
Again. You think he gets it again? I think it's tough. I think it's tough to get 2 touchdowns in back-to-back weeks.
I think he could do it this week. I've got Indiana taking it 24-10 on McCulley's 2 touchdowns.
Come on, Zion. I want to hear what you have to say.
What's your say?
on just the overall prediction here?
Yeah.
I will pick IU. You know what? I'll go 23-16 Indiana. I think it's another somewhat close one where maybe IU just has the ball with 3 or so minutes left and is able to run out the clock, something like that. But I don't know if this team is capable of getting a blowout win. The only one they've had this year was against Indiana State, which is an FCS school. So I'll say 23-16, and I definitely think McCulley will have another good day. I don't like predicting touchdowns because sometimes those can be random, but I definitely will say he has another big day, and I think Sorsby continues to play well. Maybe not as well as he played last week, but I think he will have another pretty solid day behind the line of scrimmage.
I have IU kind of similar, 21-14. I still think it's going to be a low-scoring game. Like you said, like neither team is going to probably have a blowout game towards the end of their season. But I want to say 21-14, and I want to say that I think Sorsby will have 2 of those touchdowns. I really feel like once he feels comfortable, you can kind of see it on the field. He starts to feel comfortable in his runs and starts to feel a little confident that he's protected. I think that will be a deciding factor. So I want to say that he will get 2 of those touchdowns by himself, definitely closer to the end zone. I don't see him running, 50 yards. But I will say I can see him getting close to the red zone and getting 2 touchdowns on his own.
So now moving past this game, IU is no longer bowl eligible. Who do we expect IU can have better games, more reps from the underclassmen going forward for these last 2 games?
I think for me, it's the running back, Trent Howland. We've seen him a lot lately, and for good reason. He's carrying the ball well. He's carrying it almost 5 yards a carry, which is the best of any Indiana running back. You look at this freshman, and he has gotten his playing time. I think he first started to get some playing time, maybe against Maryland or Michigan, was when they first started giving Trent Howland the ball. And from then on out, they've trusted him. Christian Turner just kind of got moved away from the rotation of running backs. He still plays a little bit, but now he's playing less than Trent Howland. We saw Howland last week get 72 yards and a touchdown, and he's just someone who I think this Indiana offense realized, okay, as a out-of-the-backfield guy, we can lean on Trent Howland. We can depend on Trent Howland, and so they're going to continue to give him the ball, and I want to see him maybe approach 100 yards in this game today.
I want to say that I think Cameron Perry is a really good idea for IU to use coming into either the end of the season with Purdue or next year. I think true freshman was someone that I feel like hasn't really been able to step up due to how they've been trying to get the offense going. And I think with Donovan McCulley as like the star wide receiver right now, they haven't been really looking for anyone else, especially since Camper has came out. But I feel like with him, that I want something from him. And I feel like I could see him stepping up to the plate. Yes, he's a little smaller as wide receiver, but they were playing him a little bit as running back as well. So I feel like you look up to him with a sense of like Jalen Lucas as someone that he could look up to in his style of play. But I really want to see him get some receptions, as well as Phillip Dunham. Defensively, I feel like Phillip Dunham has really stepped up this season. I think he's still kind of behind Aaron Casey in that kind of lineup, but like he hasn't really been able to show what he has. But when he's out there, I feel like he does. So I feel like with both of them, offensively and defensively, they can become threats for IU if they use them right.
I'm going to go with Zion on this one. I'm going to say Trent Howland is my guy for the last 2 games. You look at the beginning of the season, Jalen Lucas was supposed to be our running back, and he kind of disappeared. You know, the first few games, the non-conference games, he was really running through the pile. He was executing that well. He was finding the end zone. And once you get into those conference games, the competition picks up. He really couldn't get through. You kind of lacked that number 1 running back option, and I feel like Trent Howland could be that guy for Indiana coming to next year. I would like to see him get 10 to 15 carries these next 2 games each. You saw his last game at Illinois, 13 carries, 70 yards, and a touchdown. And he was a big help to Indiana, and I think he can be pretty beneficial to this team going forward.
Who do you think defensively you want to see step up a little bit more? Like after Aaron Casey possibly leaves, like who do you think's going to step up defensively?
I think it's hard because a lot of the guys on the defense are upperclassmen,
right.
You know, seniors, guys who are already on their 5th-year options. I wouldn't say it's more so someone stepping up. I would say it's more so Indiana going out and bringing in more of these guys from these top conferences as they've been doing each year, you know?
So you think like transfers?
I think transfer will be big. That's where a lot of the guys that are the bigger names in the line come from.
Okay,
yeah, I agree with that. I like your pick of Dunham a lot. Because you look at next year, he's probably going to have to be the guy that becomes like the leader of the defense. He's going to be a vet by the time we get to next year. So I do look at Phillip Dunham from that safety spot and say that's someone who, I don't know if it necessarily is on the field play I'm looking for from him, because he has played fairly well in most of the games. Now last week was abysmal for the secondary. All of them, safeties, corners, they all struggled in that game. But we look at Phillip Dunham as somebody who has played pretty well this season, and you just want to see him continue to ascend in the locker room as well as on the field.
Well, I think I like what you said too, Zion. Like it's going to be important about who steps up off the field. I think at this point, because like you said with, like you said, Dylan, like a lot of these players right now are 5th year, and then this is like pretty much the last go for a lot of them. I think a lot of the transfers they brought in were older, had a lot of experience from other schools. You had Kobe Minor coming from Texas Tech already. You had Jacob Magnum Farrar coming from Stanford. And so you already had players that already had so many years at other schools that a lot of this team, with possibility of them leaving, leaves IU with like a need for someone to step up. And I think Sorsby is finally finding his place, but I think also like with the Taven thing could have put him backwards a little bit. But I think who becomes a leader next year will be pivotal for IU.
Another one in the defense and in the secondary is Jamari Sharp. He struggled last week. Just to put it simply, he struggled against Illinois last week, giving up a lot of those yards. He's going to be somebody who I think they continue to lean on at cornerback if he stays at Indiana. So he at that DB spot, you want to see some good reps from him in these last 2 games.
No, I totally agree with you guys on that one. Do you guys have anything else you want to add for today?
I feel like how do you guys feel about like just the rest of the season? Do you think IU could pull out both those wins, maybe? Michigan State and Purdue?
I think IU totally could pull out the last 2. I mean, I think Purdue and Michigan State are definitely 2 bottom teams. The Big Ten, I like the way IU's been playing, and I think this is a great close to the season, and it really makes me look forward to next season for Indiana, seeing who they're going to bring in, what improvements they can make, development-wise to the quarterbacks. But I think it'll be a great way. I think Tom Allen's going to keep his seat at the table if they win these last two, which is okay.
Bold statement.
But I'm going 2-0 in these last two games.
I'll say 1-1. Obviously, I just picked them to beat Michigan State, so that means I think they won't win at Purdue. It'll just be a tough environment. I mean, that is an environment I will say that, it's probably like 70-30 every year, for whether it's at IU or at Purdue, because you have students go up and visit their friends anyway, and they're in their crowd cheering for whichever school they go to. So it's not the toughest road environment, but I just don't see this team with nothing to play for going up to Purdue and winning the game, especially because Purdue also has nothing to play for. I know last year, Indiana started off the game well against Purdue back here in Bloomington, and that's because Purdue if they won, they were going to the Big Ten championship game. So I think IU came to that game with the mentality that, okay, let's spoil their hopes and dreams of beating the Big Ten championship game. Of course, Purdue still won that game, but we saw in the first half, at the very least, IU came out with a fight and fire. In that game next week, both teams are out of bowl eligibility. Both teams are near the bottom of the Big Ten. I don't think Indiana is going to have that same passion, that same urgency that they had last year. So I'll say they finish 1-1, and then it comes to an interesting decision on what happens with Tom Allen after that.
I agree with Zion. I think it will go 1-1. I see them pulling out a home game. They still haven't won on the road, so I really don't see them doing it now at Purdue. I mean, that'd be awesome. That'd be a good, maybe a little spark of something. But I don't see them feeling like they need it anymore, which is a bummer. But I feel like they've all kind of solidified that, we don't have a bowl after this. Let's just get through these last two games. And then, like Zion said, let's just see what happens after the end of the season. I think the end of the season will be, all the new news of it will be more exciting than the actual season itself.
I totally agree. And that's what we've got for this week on the Pack the Rock podcast. It's Indiana hosting Michigan State, followed by Purdue next week. Thanks for coming on, Zion. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.